All right, we're gonna talk about my super cool tactical whiteboard. Right now I've got my draw, reload, transition, build drill, and B8 as my current metrics that I'm keeping an eye on as my benchmark over the next couple months. Now some of these, like the draw, are gonna be on this board for a very lengthy period of time, probably eternity, because it's a metric that I wanna keep an eye on and ensure that I'm maintaining my standard as I progress through my other skills. Like we talked about earlier, these are my averages from my last dry fire session, and for my B8, I just have the small little X on the wall in front of me at 3.5 feet that I'm going to be shooting into to keep track of my accuracy. For some reason, most of our drills are set up at 7 yards, which is where our build drill and draw are always tracked from. So we're going to maintain that so we have an actual benchmark to keep track of and ensure that we're in league with other shooters and ourselves. Right now, we're going to go through each of these drills and run 10 reps. I'm running the cool fire barrel, which gives me that recoil and resetting trigger, and the ability to run my shot timer. If you don't have a resetting trigger or a timer that can pick up dry fire, just run it on a par timer. For instance, if I know my build drill can be ran in a 1.9, I'm going to set a par timer for 1.9 and be very honest with my sight picture and trigger presses. For instance, if I'm only running on a par timer, I'll run a build drill 10 times and I'll run pass, 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 fail, pass, pass, fail, fail, pass, pass. Hold on a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nailed it. So right here I've got 3 fails and 7 passes, meaning I got a 70% success rate when I'm running the build drill on a 1.9 par time. So now we have to ask ourselves, with a 70% success rate, what we're trying to achieve. Is this a dry fire session where we're trying to go stupid fast to push the envelope and bring our speed up? Or are we going to try to go for an 100% success rate to ensure that we're nailing the fundamentals of the drill? We do want to ensure that we're training on both ends of the spectrum, stupid fast and dumb slow. When we go dumb slow, we're ensuring that there's no glitches or breaks in our movement pattern and it's nice and smooth from start to finish. When we go stupid fast at 100% speed, we're building our body's twitch response and ability to move that quickly. And then when we want to, we drop it down to 70–80% of the speed so we increase the repeatability. When we're running at 100% speed, we're not going to be hitting that drill the whole time. For instance, if I run 100% speed on a build drill at say like a 1.6, I might only hit one of those runs, which means I'm getting a 10% success rate. Obviously not good for the real world or competition. But the benefit of running at a 1.5 or 1.6 is that I'm going to speed up my slower runs. Meaning when I bring it back down to a 1.9 or 2, I'm going to be hitting that with a success rate of 90 to 100% because it feels slower and my body's conditioned to work at that 100% stupid speed. This is why running some blazing dry fire sessions is very beneficial. We're not hurting anybody and we're in a safe environment to test it. So when we're running at 100% speed, we're beginning to automate our movements, automate our reloads and draw to ensure that if we can hit it at 100% speed, we're going to definitely hit it at 80 or 70. And that repeatable zone between 70 and 80% of our stupid fast speed is probably where we want to stay depending on the context where we need repeatability. What you'll also find when you start going stupid fast is you'll unlock the ability to do so. You'll find a speed that your body didn't know it had, and then you'll keep pushing that bar higher and higher. That being said, at the start when we're doing our building blocks and we're building the movements of our reload and draws, there's no purpose in speeding it up at that point until we've nailed it in our subconscious that that is what a reload looks like, that is what a draw looks like, and then we can start pushing that speed. Finding that balance between stupid speed and repeatability is something that we're going to learn through our training. All right, so let's get into this. Let's track our scores through 10 repetitions of each drill and see how she goes. Once we get those 10 repetitions, we'll be able to work out our average and how we work out our average. All right, let's get into this. We're doing 10 draws. It's a 0.91. Remember, we got to be very honest with ourselves when we're running dry fire. If my sights aren't on that A zone, it's not a counted rep. .95. .90. .90. .79. .80. That one I was really high and left on a 0.81. I'm just going to put a little F next to that for fail, because I can't count. Number 8. .80. .84. 0.80. So that one I got onto the A zone, but my grip is just horrendous here. I grabbed the firearm right here instead of a nice first and final grip up into the tang. So no bueno. I got the hit on target, but I got to fix my first and final grip. So I'm just noting that was a 0.80 first and final grip. All right, I'm recharged, ready for the reload. Normally when I'm running the reload, I run it from a slide lock to the rear, both hands on the gun with a sight picture. And then when the beep goes off, I'm going right to my magazine, completing the reload, and then doing a trigger press. Now, if you don't have a resetting trigger, but you can pick up the dry fire, then just run it from the slide lock and do the trigger press, and that's the time you'll take for your chart. Now, if I'm running with my recoil barrel, all I'm doing is dropping the magazine, slide lock, and bang. That's my time. If you're running a part-time, again, just be honest with yourself. Make sure that magazine was fully inserted, you've hit the slide lock, and you've got a sight picture before the trigger press. You can run these without the slide lock as well, and just do this. That's totally fine. Do the trigger press after you've inserted the mag. Again, the slide lock shouldn't be slowing you down, so this should be the same speed as this. 8.6 for the reload. Split, 8.3 for reload. But we do want to get in the habit of remembering our slide lock, so it is good to practice both the slide lock reloads and a closed slide reload. Keep in mind that your part-times and averages are going to be variable depending on your kit. For example, with this average here, my kit was in a different configuration. My first pouch is at the front of my belt, had a better angle, and my pistol had a magwell on it. Both of those things allowed me to push the speed to a higher degree and maintain my repeatability. Without them, we're likely looking at around a 1.3 to 1.5 on the reload to ensure that we're hitting that repeatable zone. You're also probably going to see me do a mag fumble here, and that's going to push the speed way up. Sometimes it can double it when you're sitting there fumbling around trying to seat the mag. So we want to slow down to a repeatable zone where we're able to marry the hands up most of the time, 90%. So we'll see how it goes. So 1.37. .36. .34. And just for the giggles, I'm going to keep the slide forward on this one, and we'll see how much the time changes. 1.38. Do that again. 1.36. Woo! So you can see that if I would have fixed this and put it back in, I'm looking at probably about a 2.5 on that. So I was probably pushing about a 1.2 when it hit the gun, and it slid right out of the magwell, like bounced off of it. So now that's pushed me up into the 2-second category. So was it worth it? That's the question. And it's probably going to be a no. So we're going to add a fail into there. And we will maintain. 1.68. Okay, let's try to get down into a 1.2. 1.20. I'll do a little recharge here. Okay, another 1.2. 1.17. .38. So that one there, my mag didn't want to fall out. And sometimes when you try to move too quickly back into your workspace, that can kind of just float there in that zone. So we want to ensure that we're hitting the mag release while the pistol's vertical and then moving it into our workspace. Okay, let's do one more so we have a time instead of that little fail there. .49. Another big mag fumble, okay? So that's our reloads. We have 10 reloads here and a fail, and we're gonna come back to this at the end and talk about that. Moving on to the transitions. So again, I have an A zone and an A zone. They are 2 meters apart, and I'm just gonna pull out, draw, bang, transition, bang. If you're running your dry fire with just one click, come up on your first target, set your par timer for whatever you want, if that's a 0.5, 0.6. As soon as that beep goes, move and try to get the click on the next target before the par timer. All right, so we'll see what happens here. And here we're looking at the split in between the shots. So that's a 0.6. .48. .58. .51. .62. .50. That one I shot way too far to the left. I was still in the, basically in the D zone on the target. And that was at a .62. So we're gonna put a little fail on that one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 of them. Gotta do a little recharge. .58. .46. .47. .42. Next up is the bill drill, which is 6 rounds from the holster into the A zone of the target at 7 yards. .83. .80. Again, if you're running this with a par timer, just make sure that you're doing some very good simulated trigger presses all the way through to number 6, and make sure all of those are inside that sight picture of the A zone. You got to be very honest with ourselves. If we're seeing that come out at all, we got to count that run as a fail. .83. Again, this is obviously a lot easier in dry fire than it is in reality because we don't have that recoil that we got to fight to keep it in the A zone. Basically, once you get that sight picture on your first shot, you should be able to maintain that with your grip and good trigger press all the way through the bill drill. .81. .84. .82. That one I started with my sight picture about in the C zone in the upper left corner, and I definitely put a trigger press on that, so we're counting that as a fail. Oof. 2.02. A little bit of trigger freeze there. So what happens with that is I didn't let my trigger out all the way to get to the reset and tried to press it again before that reset point, which caused that little bit of delay in between my splits. Well, 1.76. .70. My barrel's freezing up a bit here, so it's not really wanting to run for me. Last one. Yes, I can't count. 1.88. Again, so you can notice with that trigger freeze there, my first round out of the holster is a .89. My first split is a .31, and then I go into 1.8, 1.5, 1.8, 1.7. So that's a pretty big difference there when you can see that and you can notice that in the rhythm when you have that trigger freeze. So moving on to the B8. So for me right now, I have just the tiny little X set up on the wall in front of me for the B8 drill, and I'm going to ensure that my sight picture is dead on that X for those trigger presses. If you don't have a resetting trigger, just run it on a par timer and be honest with yourselves to when you're pressing that trigger on the X. All right, it's 13.73. And I'm going to spare you guys the pain of watching this 100 times, and we'll just say that we did that 10 times, because that's a pretty lengthy drill to run. So what do we actually do with these numbers once we've got them on the board? And what do we do with the fails? There's a lot of different ways to deal with those failed reps, and a lot of different ways to keep track of your average. You can notice here that I have a failed rep in each of my drills, and for some reason they line up perfectly. So this is something that we're going to likely have to deal with in dry fire, as well as outliers. Outliers for me are anything that is plus or minus 50% of the group. Meaning if my transition speed is normally around like a 0.5, if I get a number in here that's like a 1.1 or 1.2, we're gonna categorize that as an outlier. And we're gonna have to deal with that number as well, because that's gonna destroy our average. When we are determining our average for our benchmarks, we're looking for a number that shows us where we're at. So if we start including the outliers, that's gonna really push our average to a point where we're not really at. It's either gonna make us a lot better than we should be or a lot worse than we should be. The way that I like to deal with this, say we do have a 1.2 in our transition column here, is to delete the outlier, but to make it fair, I also delete 2 of my best times off the board, which is gonna be my 4.2 and my 4.6. So now I'm taking the average of less numbers, but those numbers that are on the board now are more accurately reflecting where I'm actually at. Now, if you don't have an outrageous outlier that's double the time or plus minus that 50%, you can just keep your averages. What I generally like to do with failed reps is to do 3 for the price of 1. Meaning if I fail a rep, I'm gonna do 3 more reps to make up for that, and I'm gonna include that in the average at the end. So I would have had 13 numbers on this board if I had 1 fail. This also ensures that you're not ending your drill on a failed rep. You're always going to be ensuring that you have at least 3 reps that are clean prior to the end of your drill. And when I'm feeling extra depressed, I like to set the par time as a pass or fail. So this can lead to a lot of time cost and suffering. For instance, if I'm running a reload drill, I'll set the par time at 1 second, and anything over 1 second is a failed rep. Meaning I need to end this reload drill with 3 perfect reps, 0.99 or lower, before I'm done, which can lead to doing 50 to 60 reloads just to get those 3 perfect reps. But it's fantastic when it happens, and it boosts your skill level quite quickly. It also really sucks. But it's also something you might have to deal with if you don't have shot detection in your dry fire. Meaning if you're doing par times for all of these, that's basically a pass or fail. If I run a 2-second bill drill and I go over that 2 second, I have no idea on the par timer how far over I went, if it was a 2.2 or 2.3, so I have to count that as a fail. So we want to set our par timers that they're able to be accomplished with 90% repeatability, but I need to count those fails as well. So if I see that I've missed my par time and I get that shot after the beep, I count that rep as a fail. And now I'm going to repeat 3 of those to ensure that I have 3 underneath that par timer. This also helps you set realistic par times. For instance, if I go back through my bill drill and I say that I've missed 4 of my par times, then I'm not able to hit that par time repeatably, and I should be pushing the par time higher. If I can't hit a 2-second par time, I should set it at 2.2 until I'm able to hit 90% of those reps, and then I can start speeding it up. Contrary to that 90% rule, however, if you are running a stupid fast training session, you might see a board like this where I've only got 2 passes here out of 10 reps, meaning I've got a 20% repeatability rate. So that's not good, but these might also be the fastest par times you've ever hit in your life, meaning that we've unlocked another level of skill, which is fantastic. That's why the stupid fast days exist, so that we can hit that par time, and the next time we might hit it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, and then it becomes our new norm, and we can push all our par times down, and that's good. The stupid fast days, however, are few and far between, because if all we do is blaze through our training, we're going to develop some bad habits, and we're going to have some pretty rough techniques that start developing some glitches in them. Another way to deal with your failed reps are just to set your expectations prior to your dry fire session that you're going to run 10 perfect reps of your transition drill, and you're not stopping until you get 10 perfect reps. Meaning if I have 2 or 3 fails, I'm just going to still keep going until I get 10 perfect reps. And a failed rep doesn't just mean I missed the par time or missed my sight picture on the target. It can also mean things like this that we're tracking back here, the first and final grip that I royally screwed up on that draw. So for me, I would have done the 3 for 1 strategy here, and I would have done 3 for this failed rep and 3 for this dodgy rep. I still got my sight picture and made the hit, but I didn't like it. So I'm gonna run 3 more here and 3 more here, and at the end of this, I'm gonna have 14 reps and a different average to account for. Something else you can also try is just running through your 10 reps or however many reps of that drill and getting rid of your worst time or your biggest fail on your grip or sight picture, taking that time out of the equation, and then also taking out your best time to average that out. If you're on a time crunch for your dry fire or you have a specific allotment of time, then adding reps to your drills and accounting for failures can kind of screw with your time. Some guys, because of that, like to just run this in time allotments per drill, meaning I'm gonna spend 2 minutes and 2 minutes only on my draw, 2 minutes on my reload, 2 minutes on my transition, so on and so forth. It makes it a little bit more difficult to track our averages through that, but that ensures that we're done our dry fire session in 10 minutes. Keep in mind though that as you're recording your averages, you need some context for those numbers or they're kind of meaningless to look back on. We need to know what targets we were shooting at, what distance, and what kit we had on our body when we were recording these numbers. To keep this simple, you can run it kind of like a video game where I have loadout A, loadout B, and my targets are always following a set pattern. So for my B8, I know it's always going to be 25 yards, slow fire accuracy. Bill drill is going to be 7 yards from the holster, drawing and firing 6 rounds. So I'm keeping those standard, but for something like this on a transition drill, I need to know what the distance is between the target and what the preferred target area is, or my transition is going to mean nothing to me. And that's it, guys. We got to be very thoughtful with our dry fire and really be present in the moment, feeling the gun, feeling the trigger, thinking first and preparing.